Aloha kako. I am Frank Durego Jr., Business Development Projects Director for the Maui Economic Development Board, and I will be serving as moderator for this panel, Focus on the Customer, Maui Style. I want to welcome and send my aloha to our extended ohana, our Maui residents who will be watching this on our wonderful public access channel, Akaku, when it is broadcast in the next few weeks. I would like to now introduce our illustrious panel. To my right is Carl Friedman, owner and principal of Haiku Design and Analysis. Carl is respected throughout the state of Hawaii for his knowledge on and analysis of public utility regulatory issues. Next to him is Kelly Takaya King, Vice President and Chief Communications Officer of Pacific Biodiesel Technologies. Kelly and her husband Robert have been biodiesel industry pioneers for over 20 years and founded the first commercial biodiesel company in the United States. Just as an aside, Governor Ige proclaimed last week Wednesday, March 18th, as Pacific Biodiesel Day to coincide with National Biodiesel Day. So that's a great honor. Next to Kelly is Irene Bowie, Executive Director of Maui Tomorrow. Irene is very well known and has received awards for her steadfast commitment to the protection of Maui's environment. So welcome, Irene. And last but not least, Kathy Nobriga Kim, a Vice President of the Production Division of Rosalani Ice Cream, and serves as the Corporate Treasurer for a long-standing Maui business, Maui Soda and Ice Works. Kathy is a respected leader in our business community and is known for her service to Maui County through her efforts in healthcare and other professional organizations. So welcome, Kathy. My greeting this morning was Aloha kako. For the newcomers in our gathering, kako attached to aloha is a word of inclusiveness. It means you, I, everyone here share the welcome and the gifts that this day brings. Basically, kako communicates we are all in this together. And yesterday, on the first day of the conference, we had a lot of opportunities to acknowledge and remind ourselves that no matter what, we are all in this together. Yesterday, we were challenged to listen and learn from one another as various visions, alternative roadmaps, and supporting technologies were described, all with the aim to help us reach goals that I hope, and I truly believe, everyone shares. Clean, reliable, and affordable energy within the context of a community that has real choices and can exercise their freedom. This is a design problem, isn't it? How do we design a system or a business model or a market solution that will optimize that goal? Yesterday, we heard several different designs. We also heard how to gather or use data by either creating processes or researching demographic information that will inform that design and respond to people's actual wants and needs. Today's Maui panel, I think, could be looked upon as a microcosm, a smaller world that reflects the larger universe of our energy challenges. So let me begin with our panel. Let's begin our discussion on a larger issue that is affecting our local community. The price of oil has fallen by half since this time last year, and MECO bills are lower than they were at the same time last year. How should this affect our thinking about these kinds of issues, energy self-sufficiency, customer choice? And then for those of you who have businesses that are directly affected by energy, what are some of the challenges you are facing in your current environment?
Well, in my business, energy is crucial to keeping my product at the proper temperature at all times. We found that how we run our business also impacts how much we pay for electricity, because we utilize a lot of equipment that requires great surges of power at the time it starts up. So we've made those changes, and we saw savings. When the price of oil dropped, we saw some savings. In a business model, normally you get assessed at your highest peak usage. because you're telling the utility company that I need this much power available at any given time. Because of the drop of oil and because of solar and because of all these other methods coming online, we've exercised a vision of going solar. But because of our extreme usage, it would only be a small percentage of savings. I think that going into different areas of power resources will definitely help us, but it may not bring us to a point where we can, be free and clear of the cost of energy.
I would add, too, as far as the community, while it's great to have some relief from the high prices, I worry about a false sense of complacency and maybe less of a message of conservation, because we're in this lower oil prices now, and I think everyone feels that's not a permanent situation, that it will fluctuate, it will go back up again, and I think we need to keep our eyes on the prize and keep going towards the renewables and really move away from that reliance on fossil fuel.
Well, what I have to say is that this should not lessen our resolve, and in fact, now is the time. Now is the time to actually invest that savings into renewables. I mean, we've heard it personally, our company, in talks with the military and talks with the county government. In fact, the Big Island county fleet is getting ready to go on B20 next month, April 1st. There'll be the second county fleet in the state. The city and county of Honolulu has been using it since 2004, I believe. But when you make a budget, whether you're a county government, department, or a business, or the military, you budget in that fuel. So there's a huge amount of budget there right now that they're saving. Don't take that and foolishly go spend it on candy. Take that money and invest it in renewables while we have it, because that's what's going to build up the infrastructure, that's what's going to build up the supply, and that's what's going to build our green economy. Right now, we can't be short-sighted and run off and use our resources on something else at a time when it's so crucial. When we did the commissioning of Big Island biodiesel back in 2012, it was July 2nd. It was the same day as the opening day of RIMPAC, but Senator Inoue came to our commissioning to make a speech rather than the opening day of RIMPAC. And what he said was, don't blink. He said, he talked about the 70s, living through the 70s, where oil, went up to 30 cents a gallon or something like that, and it was really tragic back then. What happened was when oil went back down, everybody ran away from renewables, and nobody cared about the solar panels on the White House anymore. And we forgot about it, and we blinked. And now we don't have that wonderful infrastructure we might have had if we had kept our eye on the prize. So that day, he also predicted that oil prices would drop again. And he said to the audience of 250 that day, don't blink, keep going. And I think we're in that situation that he talked about, I feel like if we do this again, the next generation is just going to lose all hope. And part of what I experienced yesterday in this conference was talking to a couple of young people who were under 30, who were here on scholarship and interns with the RISE program. They're very frustrated because they're not part of this conversation, and this is their future. So we have to do this. We have to take care of our environment. We have to take care of our next generation, and this is how we do it. And the other thing I wanted to say was that I used to think that as a former policymaker in the education system, I used to look at our state legislature and our county councils and think, if we could just come together around a set of values, we would have guidance for where we need to go in the future. Well, we did that with HCEI, with the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative. We kind of came together around the idea that we need a clean energy initiative because, as William McDonough says, regulation is a sign of failure. If you can't do the right thing, then you have to make a law and then make people do the right thing. So we made this Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative. It's in state statute. And now we're somehow talking about the Hawaii Cheap Energy Initiative, and everybody keeps talking about price. Well, the C stands for clean, people, not cheap. And we have to remember that we had this set of values. We decided that it was so important we're going to put it into state statute, and we can't run away from that. We have to be committed to that. Otherwise, you know, what do values mean?
You know, well, I think that part of that's the crux is perhaps the coasting we've been doing with the alignment of clean and cheap for the past few years. And I remember 2008, I think, was the year where the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative started. That year we started off with, I don't know where it was a moderate level of oil prices. By the time the dialogue got going in that year, we were up to maybe almost $200 a barrel. And by the end of the year, we were back down to 40. At $200 a barrel, a lot of the things we're talking about just happen automatically. But I think there's a real task or a challenge for all of maybe the type of people who come to this conference, the people who are thinking about energy issues, decision makers, policy makers. I think there's a real challenge to try to enunciate that vision so that we keep our eye focused. I mean, the mayor basically challenged this group, says, a year ago I came here, nobody's going to warn me that energy prices are going to be half of what they were. But come on, I mean, we've all got to realize that before the time we get to our vision, there are going to be ups and downs and curves in the road, and we have to keep more than just a myopic, 10 feet ahead view on where we're going. And in order to do that, we need a roadmap. I mean, we have to have confidence that when the road swings way to the left, that eventually, we're still going to get to Hana, even though it's a windy road, right? And we can't have the illusion that it's not going to have some ups and downs. But we have been in a period where we can say very easily that, hey, we can do more renewables and save money. And now we're in a time when, maybe some of those renewables, why are we doing them again? And maybe the cheap is no longer saleable in some venues. We have to know that why is there the clean? So I think we need to be able to communicate that vision of where we're trying to get. And it would sure be helpful if we had a plan that we could all agree on. I mean, that's something that as a state and as a community of stakeholders, we have yet to really settle on a well-vetted plan about how we're going to get from here to there. There are these huge uncertainties that need, but I think with a good plan, get some confidence in that, we need to be able to enunciate the goal. We don't want to be subject to oil prices going up and down. How do we communicate that? But this conference is about the customer, and I think we need to realize that we are not the customer. The customer looks at the bill and says, right now it says, oh my gosh, the bill is high. Even at $50 a barrel, it's high. And right now, they look at the surcharge, and why is the bill high? Oh, it's because of expensive fossil fuel. Right? Well, even if we get to where we're going and we do keep our eye on the prize, it's not going to be long. The customer's going to look at the bill, and it's still going to be relatively high. Bills always look high. And they're going to look and they say, oh, my bill is high. Why is it high? Oh, because there are these surcharges here. I'm investing in my clean energy future. I mean, that's a harder task to sell that. Because even if we do get to where we're going, and we have to get the customer to understand that we're trying to get where we're going. And I know from letters to the editor, people do not understand even some of the basics. The letter says, we just put these windmills up on the hill, and that was supposed to lower my energy bill, but it's higher, so they're not working. What's going on? But it's hard to communicate to people, even a relatively simple idea that, well, your bill's going up, but it's going up by less than it would have been without the windmill. Well, that's not too complicated a concept, but it's still difficult to communicate. And we've got a bigger task than that. We really need to enunciate this vision and communicate it. So I feel like we've been here before with the, and we're going to be here. The road is winding up and down, and if we're going to get to where we're going, we're going to have to weather it all.
And I would just add to that I think it's for local government, as well as utilities, as well as community organizations, to help to educate the community on what does need to be done, and to also look beyond our state. And there was some profound discussion yesterday about climate change and about vulnerability to terrorist acts, geopolitical issues that affect things. So we really have to look at the whole world and what we're doing as part of this worldwide community and for the greater good. So I think, there definitely needs to be a real commitment to making people understand not only what's happening to them here locally and with their bills, but what is happening worldwide. And I think that we underestimate the community if we think that they're not going to embrace that and want to do what will help future generations.
Well, I think if customer choice is the issue, it has not been good, or we wouldn't be in this situation today. Let's face it, people have not been making the right choices, and if it's all about what's cheap, we're going to continue down this path, and we're going to be in a really bad space. Our next generation is going to suffer. But right now, what we need to do, education, I think, is really important, but we also need the policies and we need the mandates right now, because we are in a dire situation and people will not make those right choices. So we don't have the luxury of time of decades to be able to educate people. And, we do have a goal. We have a state goal that's very clearly outlined in HCEI. Luckily, our governor has stepped up and said, I'm going to go beyond that goal, and he actually has made a commitment to 100% renewable. He doesn't know how he's going to get there yet, and you're right, we do need a roadmap. That's going to be the difficult part. But at least there's a commitment and a belief that we can get there. I mean, my biggest fear when I look around at almost every aspect of life is, do we even believe we can do what we need to do? Because sometimes what we need and what we want are not the same things. And so it's really going to be up to those of us in the industry, in policy making, in leadership, to bring the community together to support the thing we need to do. Otherwise, we're just, we can't. I mean, I think my feeling is we can't be catering to the needs of every customer, because they're different. The motivations are different. I did a survey in the very early days of biodiesel here on the island, when we had much better support from the county level, of why people use biodiesel. And, it was all over the map. Some of it was environmental, some of it was energy security, some of it was made in Maui, local, looking for something locally made. A lot, back then it was, the war in Iraq and everything, and people did not want to contribute to going to war for oil. And so, the motivations are very different, and we don't have the luxury of time. I remember there was a presentation yesterday about changing your message for each customer. We don't have the luxury of that time. We have to make some hard decisions now. And so it's going to be up to probably the main body, and I'm sorry Roz isn't here. Senator Baker was supposed to be here, and she was ill. But, that's the body we need to say, okay, we've already made a commitment to Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative. Now we have to make the policies to get there. And I've been trying for several years now to get a biodiesel mandate into state law, similar to the ethanol mandate. And the pushback I get is, well, the ethanol mandate didn't work. Well, we don't have any ethanol production in the state of Hawaii. We do have biodiesel production, and we've had it for almost 20 years now. But the short-sightedness of saying, well, we're just going to use this other example and say we're not going to do this thing because of that. And a lot of that came from, a lot of backdoor lobbying from the petroleum industry. So there's still that influence of big money out there. We really need that strong commitment from our policymakers and our lawmakers to say we're going to focus on the right thing, not, the short-sightedness of, what can happen within my term of office or, while I'm raising money. So To me, that's the crux of it, is can you look at what we've already said we were going to do and make a commitment to that?
I'm thinking about Kathy's situation right now as a business, and do you think this dichotomy between affordable and reliable is a false dichotomy, in the sense that, if you're going to have affordable energy and clean energy, it may not be that affordable? How do we respond to Kathy and her business? And you can join in this as well, Kathy. If we went to 100% renewable, are we going to be paying more for that in the long run? I've heard some discussion yesterday that that's a kind of a false claim, that we're going to be paying if we go to 100% renewables in the state. And I wonder what your reaction is to that.
Realistically, my position is I don't think we can be 100% renewable. There's going to be a blend of renewable and continually on the fossil fuel side. And my reason for saying this is because regarding policy, regarding the law that was put into place, and regarding the roadmap, as payers of the system, when we see the additional charges, we don't see progress. The roadmap would basically lay it out, and we can say, okay, we paid this much extra for the different fees, and we've gotten this much further up the roadmap. And I think as customers, we need to see that validation. Now, as far as energy being reliable in my business, it has to be reliable. When Maui Soda and Ice Works began in 1888, we were an ice company situated in the Kahului Harbor area. When we moved to our current location in 1900 because of the bubonic plague, we were producing electricity for the county of Maui. And we did that through our diesel equipment because we needed to have refrigeration for ice. Now, as we progressed, we became more reliant on the utility company to provide that power. Maybe it's come to the point where we have to go back and provide our own energy, but it has to be a balance. There has to be some sort of balance. It's like in my business. You can't be 100% to everybody. You have to pick and choose, so we choose our niche. And energy, as important as it is going to have a cost attached to it because we have to progress. We can't stay in a dinosaur age. We have to progress. It takes investment. But you got to show progress for that investment. If progress is not shown, then that's when the consumer doesn't want to believe what you're saying.
Well, I mean, one of the things I heard you say is do we have any trade-off between renewable and reliable? And I don't think that there's any question about that. With the type of economy we have and the way we rely on electricity, we need reliable power. I don't think that going to renewables is going to jeopardize that. It can't. Mm-hmm. That needs to be one of the givens at the beginning. Regarding cheap, I mean, the question, does going to 100% mean it's going to be more expensive? You got to show me a map that shows how we're going to get to 100% to answer that question. But I think the reality is that no matter what we say or the planners say or whatever the state goals are now, if getting to 100% is too expensive, we're not going to get there. I mean, electricity is a fundamental necessity for our economy, and everybody has to pay for it. And nobody can get away without paying an electric bill. And basically the same people who are the customers are the voters. So a state goal is not going to survive a hugely expensive bill in order to get there. So I think somebody at the conference said something about, we navigate by the stars, and we know we're not going to get there, but it gets us to where we're going. And so the concept of 100% right now seems to me to be a little bit of an idealistic goal. We don't know exactly what that means. And to shoot for it, I mean, in the long run, of course we're going to be 100% renewable. Generations from now, if it isn't renewable, it's gone.
We're alive. Generations from now.
Well, we aren't going to be, but I mean, but how we get there, I think, is going to answer that question.
Well, I don't think we have to trade off reliability for renewables, and I'm saying that from someone who's in an industry where our fuel is firm power. It's a direct replacement for diesel fuel. We also have a burgeoning battery industry, storage industry that's finally breaking through that barrier of making affordable, reliable batteries. We have geothermal. We have backup types of renewable energy in the state that we can develop even more if we get the support for it. But looking at things long term, in the long run, and this was said at the meeting on Oahu of the Women in Renewable Energy recently, which was, I think it was so full, it was sold out because the governor came and the head of DBED, Louis Salveria, the head of DBED, the director of transportation, Ford Fujigami, and we actually had a few men sign up, but they couldn't get in because they had to let the women members in first. But this was said at that meeting by Louis, was in the long run, it is definitely going to pay off for us to to go 100% renewable and to be making energy in the state, because we import so much right now. I mean, we have to be, our short-sightedness is that we're looking at the price at the pump, we're looking at the price of a barrel of oil. What the green economy can bring to our state in terms of jobs, in terms of energy security, the avoidance of that volatility risk that we have with oil going up and down. Possibly, we just experienced a dock strike on the West Coast in January. It hurt a lot of our businesses, including ours, So all of these things affect us, not to mention the environmental risk of oil spills and things like that. I've watched over the last 6 months a number of oil spills that have happened in the state, and I thought, well, if they'd been that boat had been operating on biodiesel, that 75,000 gallons or whatever wouldn't even, kill a single fish. So there's a huge amount of expense that we can alleviate. There's a huge amount of, there's revenue, there's taxable income in jobs, all the benefits that we can reap by creating the renewable energy in our state that if the state helps with those things, with the infrastructure, with creating the opportunities for these businesses, it's going to come back in spades later on. Right now, the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum, which Carl and I are members of, is our top priority this year is to we've just funded, and with the help of Ulupono, a cost-benefit study for renewable energy. So we can show, we'll look at all of these benefits of developing the renewable energy economy, and then we can share that with the general public, but also our policymakers, so that when they're making, when we're trying to develop this plan, we can see, okay, if we invest 30 cents, for our industry, if you invest, for instance, 30 cents a gallon in tax credits, it's going to come back, to the tune of $1 a gallon of what that means in terms of jobs and revenue and all of these other cost benefits I'm talking about. So that's the big picture, and that's what we have to be concerned with. And I know as individual businesses you're concerned with cost, but we also, as people in this community, have to be concerned with the bigger picture of how we're taking care of our environment and our next generation.
And also, I think the vulnerability that we have with continued reliance on imported fuels coming in, that what we tend to see is each island has its own renewable energy profile, and I think if, again, we keep our eyes on that and really develop the renewables according to what each island has to offer, we can, as you say, 100% it may be out there, as a goal down the line, but to keep going in that direction, because I think vulnerability is really something. You mentioned that, possible dock strikes, anything that could happen. We are an isolated set of islands out, farther away from any place else in the world. And so I think it's prudent for us to continue to go in this direction. And hopefully we do find that the costs, as you say, with battery storage and other things, as more is developed, the costs go down, and that this transition does not need to be painful.
And I think it's a mistake, too, to get too hung up on the percentage number. I know one of the first goals was 20% by 2020, It had a nice 20ness to it and wasn't based on any kind of analysis. I think the HCEI was 70% clean energy. That's kind of our current thing. We kind of folded some of that into statute. But I think we need to refocus and re-enunciate and get some goals that are a little more resolute and long-lasting. I mean, the forecast that 70% was based on is about 10 years old now. And as we go further out, 70% of what? Some forecast that was done a long time ago. But 100%, we could get to 100% in a really uncomfortable way. And to use an example you kind of brought up, I mean, are we going to distinguish between imported biofuels and the kind of local biofuels that we're making here? So Kelly's company is very good. I mean, in all parts of their business, they're trying to be local, sustainable. But there are sources of biofuels out there that are not necessarily going to reduce carbon emissions on the planet. They're not necessarily good for the environment and the impacts of where they come from. But as far as our 100%, we could get to 100% just by importing a lot of biofuels and just powering all the power plants and all the vehicles on the island with biofuels. We'd get to 100%, it wouldn't be cheap, but we wouldn't be meeting those objectives. Right. So I think that part of this enunciation of the vision might need to get beyond just going to the legislature and said, let's get it to 60%, let's get it to 80%, let's get it 100%. I think the task is really a little more, needs to be more focused. What are we trying to do? We are trying to keep money on the island. We are trying to keep the prices stable and not volatile. I mean, the old energy policy used the word indigenous, not fossil fuels. And maybe that's another way to go, because our current 1% doesn't say anything about indigenous or not. So I think refocusing that. So I'm a little, I don't know, when people are trying to get the legislature to kind of double down and say we have to do 100%, I get a little alarmed that just forcing that might not get us to where we really want to go.
Well, and does it really matter if it's in state statute? I mean, we have the HCEI right now, and there's all kinds of debate. I mean, there's a renewed focus on cost, over clean. So does it really matter if it's in state statute? If we have that commitment to shoot for the stars, that's what I was happy to hear. Was that, whether or not it makes it into statute. But the idea of, we could get there in a really uncomfortable way. I mean, what is comfort compared to what's happening? If we wait and in 15 or 20 years we lose 3 feet of our island all the way around, that's pretty uncomfortable to me. Not saying that, if we do this today that's going to affect that, but those are the steps that we're taking to try to, avoid those kinds of what's going to happen with climate change. So. We have to think beyond our own immediate comfort, is what I'm saying. And I wouldn't want to end up like Easter Island, where we take all of our resources and, for instant gratification, and all of a sudden we turn around and we go, well, what happened to our efforts for local food and fuel? It was too expensive, so we didn't do it. Now we have no resources that we built up.
Okay. It's great discussion, actually. You've made my job a lot easier. Okay, so let's do a design thought experiment here. If you were going to design a system that supports stable, lower prices and increase customer choices and take us to a clean energy future, and one that takes extreme volatility out of the equation, how would you create that system?
It's early in the morning.
Yes, I know. I saved the best one for last.
I'm looking at my notes, and you didn't put that. You didn't tell us you were going to ask.
I saved that for last.
Well, how? By what process? And so let's look at where we are right now. We have the electric side of things, and we have the transportation side of things, and the how of it, in the electric side, a lot of the how is in the regulated electrical utility sector. And some of that is happening because of planning. Some of it is happening because the regulators are saying it has to go this way, both by statute or by the Public Utilities Commission. Some of it, as Mark Duda says, some of it is just happening. Whatever batteries and PV, they're just happening, and there are forces out there happening. So how we're going to do it is a mishmash, and I think that the challenge is to try and make what we end up with as good as possible. That's a process type of thing. In terms of the how of what resource mix, that's a difficult question. I can't really address that because I'm involved in some work at the commission for that. But the transportation side, I think we have to remember too, is like 2/3 of our energy pie is transportation. 1/3 of it is ground transportation. Part of it's air transportation. The how of it is very amorphous. I mean, it's so amorphous that it makes the electric side seem like we're gone leaps and bounds in terms of the how of it.
Well, I think we need some smarter minds than we've had recently in advising our state leadership and our state legislature. But what we need is, and I saw this briefly with a bill proposal last year, but first of all, we need a plan for, we do need a plan for what a portfolio is going to look like. And in my opinion, that should be based on what we call TRL, which is a technical readiness level. There's so many proposals that come in on a weekly and monthly basis for, everything from a car that runs on air to, we've seen a lot of proposals for different types of technology, for fuels, for other types of energy, and a lot of these are proposals and have not been proven. So there was a bill last year that died in session, but it was proposing that the PUC should not approve any contracts that did not have what we call TRL, technical readiness level, of at least 6. And there's a definition in the U.S. Department of Energy of what all of these levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, the technical readiness levels mean. And if you can focus on, if we know that we have a goal of 2030, say, which is in state statute, then we have to have a certain level of technical readiness to include certain types of energy and certain types of technology in our portfolio. We have to make a commitment to do that and to bring in those smarter minds who can evaluate the technical readiness levels of the different proposals. There is one company that's been proposing for a long time, biofuels company, and they signed a contract with the utility. Their first delivery of fuel was 5 years after the contract gets approved by the PUC. So it's a technology that hasn't been developed yet. It's a business that hasn't been built yet, but they need the commitment to get the investment. But are we going to get 5 years down the line and find out there's still not that gallon of fuel there? So there needs to be some kind of balance between the excitement of innovation and bringing new technologies and making a commitment to putting that into the portfolio. And personally, I don't blame I think the utility, all of the contracts that they've been signing for in what I call our industries, the biofuels industry, I would sign everything that comes down the road because everything's a potential, but what actually materializes, we won't know, And by the way, the fact that they did that has helped our company get the support just because of the fact that they're out there looking for this type of fuel to get the support for new investment and things like that. So I think it is important, but there has to be a balance between reality and what's technically ready at this time that could be developed by 2030 and be in place by 2030, and what might be just pie in the sky ideas or hopes or dreams or what's far from being proven. I sat in an energy conference on the Big Island a couple of years ago, and one of the companies that was proposing a project on the Big Island said, our pilot project, this was a Tuesday, and he said, our pilot project fired up on Friday, and so now we're perfect. Well, that doesn't happen. You know, pilot projects take a long time to go from pilot to demonstration to, you know, and so there's a there's a little bit of a disconnect sometimes, and we need that technical expertise advising our leaders on policy making to figure out what should be in that portfolio, what the plan is.
Hang on to that thought. I want Irene to get a chance to get in here.
I think you make great points on that. And one example that comes to mind is the Wave Energy project that was going to be on Maui's North Shore. And a lot of us, you know, met with those folks early on, and it looked very encouraging. And then they ran into difficulties, and it's been years now. We haven't had any update on that. So definitely some kind of a balance between the technological readiness and investment and support for new technologies is needed. You know, that I think is important.
Well, yeah, I wanted to add to the how thing, because I think in terms of looking at the technologies, looking at the resource analysis, all this expertise, we've had a lot of that. We've kind of gone around and around on a lot of that. But I'm hoping that somewhere in the how we get some communication and education and leadership so that when we do decide or we do figure out what solutions are, we can actually get it to happen in a good way. And I was very inspired by Jeannie Skogg's presentation yesterday about the listening exercise. I guess call it a listening exercise of going out to the customers, to the general public, and finding out what matters to them. And I think that has to be part of the how. If we're going to put any of these big projects in, whether they're huge investments in, anything. I mean, if it's going to be an LNG terminal, if it's going to be an inter-island cable, if it's going to be vast investments in energy efficiency, whatever it is, ultimately, the people who are paying for it need to be behind it, and the more they understand it, the more it's going to be better. If we're going to site any big facilities, we want to have them, be accepted and where they are.
I want to ask Kathy, I mean, this affects a lot of your business. How do you want to be involved in this conversation? I mean, this is exactly the kind of thing that Carl is talking about. As a business who is a big consumer of energy, transportation as well as electricity, how do you want to be involved in this conversation?
I would think that we would like to be a part of the solution and not just the audience, so to speak. Getting different businesses, different consumers involved brings to light that they are part of the process. When the process is handled and then it's said, okay, this is what we're going to do, without the understanding, that's when you have the holdback from different groups. So involving businesses in the community in a number of these areas that you're discussing is very important, I think. The fact that our government is so tied into it, part of that might be what's questioning a lot of us, that it has to be mandated, and it's not happening voluntarily.
And I would love to add, continuing with that thought, that in the community energy workshops that Jeannie was talking about yesterday, one of the points that came in was information that could be trusted. I think that is so important in our community. We've seen that time and time again. There needs to be transparency. The community needs to feel like they really are getting accurate information. The whole discussion of the undersea cable and what that might be, where it would be placed, what benefits we would get out of it, what it would cost. All of that has been very unclear, and so I think...
Not to mention the landfill project.
And exactly, with a number of things. And I think that will be the case with LNG. I think there's a lot that needs to be looked at that. And also, you had mentioned earlier, we're all in this together. That's a broad worldwide picture. So in the same way that the discussion came up a number of years ago about palm oil being a replacement for fossil fuels for Hawaii, we need to look at social justice issues, environmental issues in other communities. I know that in British Columbia, where we're looking to take this LNG from, there's big discussions not only in the environmental community but in the First Nations community. You know, what are the impacts? So all of that, I think transparency has got to be right on top.
I think we're all professionals in our different areas of business. Okay, you asked me about ice cream, I'll be able to tell you the ins and outs of ice cream. But as far as energy, you know, I don't have that level of understanding that you do. The only understanding I have is my electric bill, you know, and why it's costing me $32,000 to $36,000 a month. And the price of oil goes down, but I don't see a significant drop. So you have to understand that that's all the information we users really have. And yes, you have to make a voluntary effort to educate yourself in these different arenas, but education, I think, is the key to an understanding and our ability to validate what's happening.
Well, can I just ask, follow up on with Kathy, what would be a way to get, you know, businesses like yours involved? Because I know that Jeannie reached out. I actually participated in one of those MEDB sessions, and there were only like 7 people in our session. So what would be a way? People running businesses are busy, and trying to get them to come into a meeting to be educated is difficult. But to me, that's the only way that the interaction, the discussion interaction is the only way you're really going to get that transparency, not by going to a meeting and having people talk at you. You know, going back to the issues with the waste-to-energy project in the landfill, the businesses that are affected by that were never consulted before that RFP went out or the proposal was approved. And just now the community is starting to ask those of us who are in the recycling business to come out and talk about how this affects us. What are the realities of the cost? The public has no idea how much that's going to cost us, you know, on Maui. And so, but we're not going to get, but we went through months and months of going to county council meetings, sitting there as an attendee and listening to the presentations by the county and not being able to ask questions, not having that interaction. And so so we didn't get the true information. Now, you know, now that it's starting to come out, people are not happy. So what is the best way to get you, like a business owner or people who are using electricity or energy, like, you know, even transportation energy, into a format where you feel like you could be educated and also get the answers to the questions that you need to have answered?
For us, I think it would be like a pilot project. You would come in with your proposal and conduct some type of time frame to show if we were in your operation, if this is what you do, this is what can be done to reduce it, and do a pilot project. And because we have to see the actual results. We can have discussions back and forth, but we need to see the actual results.
Well, I was more thinking in terms of educating businesses on, you know, what renewable energy is and why it's important for us to move in this direction.
That's a difficult question because, as you said, we're all busy people.
Right.
And sending the right people to these symposiums is very important. But I think, you know, we're old school by age, and I think reaching out to our youth would be the most effective way of getting the progress that we need. When you're in an operation and you have all these areas that you have to manipulate in order to produce, you can't take the time off to actually look at other opportunities. I think our youth of today, like my son went to Cal Maritime Academy, and he comes home and kind of tells us, you know, if you did this, you did this, you did this, you might find some savings. Well, the difficulty in the younger generation telling the older generation what can be done is also a very hard pill to swallow. Because we have to put in our time and our effort to get to where we're at. But I think the younger generation is where the advantages will come into play. Here on the island of Maui, I don't believe, other than HCNS and ourselves, if there are large manufacturers, using the type of power that we do use. And that's scary when there's only 2 of us left.
And the county, the amount of power that the county needs.
Yeah. So getting the younger generation involved, because we hope that they're the next generation to take over the business, I think is very important. And their minds are much more open than the older people.
I think it's also got to be just people have to realize that they have to get involved. You have to make the effort to be educated. There needs to be meetings, and people need to show up and ask questions, because otherwise things happen. If we're apathetic, things will happen. And so, the onus really is on the community.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move now to some questions. And please, more questions. I only got 2 for our panel here. This is one's directed to Kelly. Why doesn't Maui County government use biodiesel in their fleet? Have you tried to talk to the mayor about that?
Wow, that sounds like a question for the mayor, not me. When we first started 19 years ago producing fuel, Maui County was the first fleet to be on, the garbage disposal fleet was on biodiesel, and pretty successful. And over the years, the commitment has gotten less and less. In the early days of biodiesel, there were a lot of concerns with quality throughout the industry, because there are a lot of people, especially on the mainland, making biodiesel in their backyard and getting it out into the commercial fleets sometimes, and not being tested. And there was an issue. I mean, when we first started making biodiesel, there was no test. There was no standard. A few years later, and we participated with the federal government in creating that ASTM standard. A few years later, there was a standard, but the users of the fuel, the OEMs, the engine manufacturing sector, was very leery of it because people like even our friend Willie Nelson would go on Letterman and talk about using vegetable oil and calling it biodiesel, and we kept trying to say, no, vegetable oil is not biodiesel. It's a different process. So there was a big misunderstanding. And I think the reason we're, as a company, still standing today is because my husband had a reputation as the best diesel mechanic on the island of Maui, and so he was able to go look at people's engine problems and say, no, that has nothing to do with the fuel. I mean, we were the Cummins engine dealership for Maui County, and way before we got into biodiesel, he made most of his money on bad injectors, on injector problems. It has nothing to do with biodiesel, it's just the injectors go bad. And so, so we personally knew it wasn't the fuel, but we dealt with a lot of that pushback. And there's a lot of people in the county administration who prefer to believe that story rather than to look at the fleet in the Seating County of Honolulu that's been using biodiesel since 2004, and other fleets around the state, private business fleets, people who are running their entire business, like Mackay Glass, they run, all of their power generation is biodiesel, and that's what they use. They get better heat out of it than running regular diesel when they run their generator. So there's a lot of evidence, but we have not been able to break through that barrier at the county level, which is ironic because we keep hearing they want to go, renewable. And so, we can't spend all our time beating our head against that brick wall. We have to move on, and thank goodness we've got great support on the Big Island, and they're getting ready to put their entire fleet on B20, which will start next. And then, we're working with the island of Kauai as well to hopefully get those folks on. I think the state fleet will be probably the next after the Big Island, but I wish I could really answer exactly why. It's been for us, there were times when we actually thought about moving off of Maui because we weren't getting the level of support, and it's very upsetting that the island we started on, and the entire biodiesel industry knows Pacific Biodiesel, knows Maui because we started here, that we don't have that level of support. But I guess I want to thank whoever asked that question, because it does need to be asked publicly, like, why are you not using the fuel that started on your island?
Thank you. The next question is for everyone. From the customer standpoint, will the undersea cable to Oahu, as proposed by Nextera and DBET, provide any benefits to Maui?
I would just say the biggest question that the environmental community has had on the undersea cable, what we've been told is that if it did happen and it was running from Oahu to Maui, that we would be sending our renewables to Oahu where it's needed, and we would be getting their fossil fuel back. And so is that really a win for us? It just seems like, why do we want to go there? Why do we want to incur that expense? So it does. I don't think it fits with this goal of moving towards 100% renewable. We don't need fossil fuel brought in from Oahu.
Okay, good. I'm trying to do these in order that I get them.
I could expound.
Now, yes. This one's for Carl. There's a lot of talk and agreement about listening to the customer, but often that translates into getting the customer on board, which has nothing to do with listening. Listening involves taking in and putting into action what the customer wants. This is directed to you. To what extent are you willing to do that? I don't know exactly what that means. And how can we resolve this?
Okay, well, I'm not personally going to be doing anything, but I mean, but it's a great question. And I think that it's a two-way street. Communication is a two-way street. And the policymakers really do need to know what matters to people. I mean, it's not like we're doing renewables despite what people want. I think Thomas Jefferson, I'm not even going to get the quote right or try, but there's a Thomas Jefferson quote, something about as the governing people, you know, if the people don't understand, it's not our job to just make the decisions for them. It's our job to go educate people. And I think that the idea of the communication and listening is a two-way street. I think that the policymakers need to pay attention to what matters to people, and get enough involvement and communication there, so that when a decision is made, there's some sharing in it. People have some trust. And I don't think it's a matter of going out and convincing people. I think that's the problem we have with a lot of the communications we get right now, is it's the PowerPoint. You know, you have a meeting and you get the PowerPoint and you sit there and you feel like they're trying to convince me of something, you know. And I don't think that's what I found attractive I think what we saw yesterday in the presentation was a different type of listening exercise. And it really is listening. But that type of listening is communicating that you are listening, and you do have to listen in the end. So I don't see it quite as that dichotomy. And, you know, I don't think that you can run an electrical system by having people vote on it, or you can't go out and figure out how to design an electrical system or do all of the vetting and the economics by going out to the public and then just doing what they want. Okay, everybody wants this, so we'll just have only PV. That's nothing else, just PV. That's not going to work. So you can't. It's got to be a combination, I think.
So we've only got a couple of minutes left, so I want to go around. And if you have any final thoughts, anything to say to our citizens of Maui County about their energy future or how to get involved, why don't we start with Kathy?
Energy is something that we need on a daily basis, and I think our involvement is pertinent to the success of any model that is provided, any roadmap that's provided. I think what one of you have said is we have to get involved, and this is an area that maybe for myself I haven't thought about, but maybe it's time to get involved and be part of the solution instead of just staying the same old, same old.
Okay, next. We've got about 20 seconds each.
I'd just say, again, I was very encouraged to hear the results of the community energy workshops, that our community is concerned about a continued dependence on imported fuel. We do want to know environmental impacts of projects that come in. We need to learn about lifestyle changes that will help us conserve energy. And lastly, again, that we want information from government and from the utilities that can be trusted.
Well, I'm going to go back to something that Kathy said, and thank you for making that comment about getting the youth involved. You know, I look around and I see, you know, first of all, I was so glad to finally be on a panel with three women and only one guy, because I'm usually the only woman on a panel.
I don't count, yeah.
But, well, you know, you're the moderator, Frank. And by the way, Frank did an extraordinary job as setting up this panel, so thank you for that. But I really I think we need to see more young people on these panels, asking questions as well as making comments. And the two young people I spoke with last night at the reception felt like they didn't know enough. They need more information. But that doesn't mean they can't be part of the conversation and ask those questions in a format like this. So, you know, it's their future. It's going to be their children's future. We need to start getting them involved, and we need people to pass off the baton to, because, you know, I mean, I want an exit strategy, don't you guys? So, yeah, let's pick up on that and try to focus on that. Maybe a good point for next year's conference.
Okay, Carl.
Well, I think I've just imparting to this group, I think we just need to remember that we are not the customer. We are all customers, but we need to remember to communicate whatever vision we can come up with, and that's an important process that we need to do. I think we need more attention on resolving our goals of why we want to go where we're going in a way that is simple, we can agree about, and we can communicate well. And it's not just a technical solution. It's really a process.
Okay, time's up, and I want to thank our panelists. Let's give them a great hand. And thank you very much. Thank you for being here.